Welcome to Inside Insights, your quick hit of tips, tools, and trends for manufacturing, distribution, and Dynamics 365 Business Central. Brought to you by InsightWorks.
Imagine you are standing in a commercial kitchen, right? Like prepping for this massive dinner service.
Okay, I can picture that.
Yeah, so your station is totally set. Your knives are sharp. All the ingredients are prepped. You actually start breaking down the proteins.
Right, you're in the zone.
Exactly. But suddenly, right in the middle of a really complex cut, the kitchen system just locks you out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And before you are legally allowed to turn on the heat, the operating rules of this kitchen say you have to, drop your knife, walk out of the kitchen entirely, and sit at a terminal in the back office.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It is. You have to log the exact weight of every single piece of trim you just made. And then you hit save, wait for the network to confirm it, walk all the way back to your station, sanitize your hands, and, try to find your rhythm again.
Which is impossible. You'd lose your momentum entirely. I mean, in a high-volume environment like that, breaking physical momentum for the sake of administrative data entry, it's just a fast track to missed deadlines and, honestly, massive inefficiencies.
Right, and that frustrating, just completely momentum-killing interruption. That is exactly what's happening on warehouse floors running Business Central right now.
It really is a pervasive issue.
So we're diving into a set of solutions today for you. We are specifically looking at a source document titled Streamlining Assembly Operations with Warehouse Insight and Business Central.
It's a great read.
It maps out how the rigid logic of enterprise software basically collides with the chaotic, totally flexible reality of a physical assembly floor.
Because when the software demands a digital step that defies physical logic, the worker just stalls.
Exactly. And as the source material bluntly puts it, when the work stops, the floor pays for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fundamental architectural clash.
Yeah.
Enterprise Resource Planning System, or ERPs, they are built on sequential, idealized logic by their very nature.
They like things neat and tidy.
Right, they act as the brain of the operation. But, a brain relies on a pristine flow of information. The software assumes this perfect progression. You gather materials, you assemble them, you track them, you output them.
Like a straight line.
Exactly. It's a linear state machine. But the physical floor, it doesn't operate in a pristine, linear vacuum.
No, not at all. Physical reality is constrained by, shift changes, spatial limitations, and just the unpredictable timing of human labor.
Yes.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the tool we're analyzing today. The source details how a WMS, or warehouse management system called Warehouse Insight, is built to essentially act as the nervous system.
Connecting the brain to the hands.
Yeah. It connects that pristine brain to the messy reality of the hands on the floor. It extends those really complex Business Central workflows directly to handheld devices.
Which is a crucial step.
But my immediate question when reading this was, why is that translation layer even necessary? I mean, Business Central is an incredibly robust platform on its own.
It is, absolutely. So if we already have scanners and standard mobile apps, why does AssemblyWorks specifically generate these operational bottlenecks? Why do we need a specialized WMS to bypass them?
That's a great question. It's because standard mobile interfaces often act as a rigid mirror of the desktop software rather than actually adapting to the physical context of the worker.
Oh, I see.
Standard software has to enforce generalized rules to maintain database integrity. So it demands that a worker basically compensate for the software's blindness to the physical environment.
Give me an example of that.
Well, if the system's baseline assumption is that every assembly requires a formalized picking process, it will mandate that step in the user interface.
Even if it doesn't make sense physically.
Exactly. Regardless of whether the physical components are actually stored halfway across the building or, just sitting in a floor stock bin 2 feet from the assembly table.
Okay, let's follow that exact thread. Because the gathering phase of assembly is where the source document highlights the first major point of friction.
The no-pick locations.
Yeah, think about the physical journey of a product. Before you build, you need parts. In a standard Business Central setup, a warehouse location can absolutely be configured to not require picks.
Right, you just draw from floor stock.
Exactly. But standard device software sometimes hard-codes the assumption that a pick must happen anyway.
And that creates a logic loop that totally traps the worker. I mean, the parts are physically in their hands.
Right.
The location is configured in the ERP to not require a pick. But the generic device interface throws an error saying you cannot proceed with assembly consumption until a pick is registered.
Which is just maddening. The worker is blocked by a phantom requirement.
Exactly. And Warehouse Insight circumvents this by reading the specific location card's configuration rather than just defaulting to a generic document assumption.
So it actually looks at the specific rules for that exact spot on the floor.
Yes, it allows the assembly output to complete correctly, processing the consumption in the background without forcing the user to, like, stage a dummy pick.
But wait, if the device allows the worker to bypass the pick step and just hit complete, how does Business Central know those specific items were actually consumed?
That's the trick, right?
Yeah, I mean, doesn't bypassing that step mess up the inventory allocation in the ledger?
Well, it doesn't bypass the database requirement. It bypasses the manual user intervention.
Oh, okay.
Instead of forcing the worker to manually process a warehouse movement to an assembly bin before consuming, the WMS recognizes the no-pick location status.
And handles it for them.
Right. It automatically triggers the item journal consumption posting directly upon output. It basically collapses two sequential database actions into a single physical action.
Wow, so the ledger is perfectly balanced, but the worker didn't have to pause to tell the system what it should already know.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes total sense for floor stock.
Yeah.
But the source material outlines a much more complex scenario regarding the timing of gathering material.
Independent consumption.
Yes. What happens when picking and consumption are separated by time? Like, let's say a worker pulls a massive pallet of raw materials on a Monday shift. They stage it right at the assembly line.
Okay, Monday prep.
But the actual build, like the consumption of those materials, isn't scheduled until the Tuesday afternoon shift.
Yeah, that is where rigid sequential software really breaks down. Standard setups often try to force picking and consumption to happen in lockstep.
Like they have to happen at the exact same time.
Right. It assumes that if you've moved it, you must be using it right now. And if a system tightly couples those two actions, the floor worker is forced to hold off on picking until the exact moment of assembly.
Which ruins staging efficiency, right?
Completely. Or, even worse, they pick it Monday, tell the system they consumed it Monday just to clear the screen, but they physically build it on Tuesday.
Which means your financial system thinks you have finished goods on Monday that, well, don't actually exist yet.
Precisely. It corrupts your real-time inventory valuation.
That's a huge problem for the accounting side.
It is. And Warehouse Insight solves this by functioning almost like a switch track on a railway. It decouples the actions entirely.
Decouples them. Okay.
It supports recording assembly consumption independently of the warehouse pick. The physical movement of the goods from the bulk rack to the assembly staging bin is recorded.
So the system knows the items are moved.
Right. But the actual consumption, the decrementing of the raw materials and the incrementing of the finished good, that doesn't trigger until the worker physically completes the build on Tuesday.
Let me push back on that decoupling for a second, though.
Sure.
If I pick components on Monday and move them to an assembly bin, but I don't post the consumption until Tuesday, doesn't that create a 24-hour blind spot?
What do you mean?
Well, how does the floor manager, or like the sales team looking at Business Central, know what raw materials are actually available to promise to another order?
Well, that is the beauty of decoupling it correctly within the WMS. It doesn't create a blind spot at all. It actually creates a highly visible holding state.
A holding state.
Yeah. When you execute the independent pick, the items are moved into a dedicated assembly bin in the system. They are no longer in bulk storage, so the sales team can't accidentally promise them to a different order.
Oh, they're officially allocated.
Exactly. They are allocated, but they haven't been transformed into a finished good yet, so your financial ledger isn't prematurely updated.
That's brilliant.
The software is finally mapping directly to the physical reality. The items are in transit on the floor, waiting to be built.
It's adapting to the physics of the warehouse, rather than forcing the warehouse to adapt to the database.
Exactly right.
Okay, so the materials are gathered, whether through floor stock or stage picking. The worker executes the build. Now we hit the processing phase, which is where data capture becomes just totally critical.
The most critical part, really.
Yeah, and the source document pivots heavily into item tracking at this stage, specifically handling lot and serial numbers during output.
This is traditionally where the most dangerous latency occurs in an assembly operation.
Like a time delay.
Right. Imagine you finish building a pallet of electronics or packaging a lot of pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
If the standard procedure requires the worker to finish the physical build, walk away from their station, log into a remote desktop terminal, and then manually type in the serial numbers for the 50 units they just produced.
You are inviting catastrophic data corruption.
Exactly.
The latency introduces risk. You're relying on a worker reading off a clipboard, just hoping they don't transpose a digit or associate the wrong serial number with the wrong outbound order.
And you are also creating database locks. I mean, if you wait 2 hours to log those 50 serial numbers, what happens if another process in the warehouse queries that inventory in the meantime?
You get phantom availability or routing errors.
Yes, it's a mess. But Warehouse Insight shifts that data capture directly to the handheld device at the exact moment of output.
So they do it right there.
Yeah, the worker scans the serial number on the unit while it is physically in their hands.
At the moment of output, where they belong. I love that line from the text. That concept completely shifts the dynamic. You are capturing the data at the source of the physical action.
It just makes so much more sense.
But the document brings up a scenario that I know causes massive headaches for database administrators: mixed tracking configurations.
Oh, yes. Supply chains rarely use a single methodology from end to end.
Right.
You might have a process where you consume a raw material that is tracked by a lot number, say, a massive spool of specialized industrial wire.
Okay, so a lot number just tells you it was all manufactured in the same batch.
Exactly. But when you cut that wire and assemble it into 50 individual consumer-ready wiring harnesses, the outbound compliance requires a unique serial number for every single harness.
So you are consuming by the lot, but outputting by the serial.
Yep.
In a strict relational database, dealing with a one-to-many tracking shift in a single transaction usually throws a constraint error, like it's a tracking mismatch.
A huge one.
The system just freezes because it doesn't know how to map a bulk batch ID directly to 50 distinct unit IDs without a manual intervention breaking the workflow.
Right. In a rigid user interface, it absolutely blocks the worker. They'd have to back out, process the consumption in one screen, navigate to a completely different ledger screen to generate the serials, and then try to tie them back to the original order.
Which is super tedious.
But the source notes that Warehouse Insight fully supports these mixed configurations natively on the device.
But how does it actually reconcile that mid-process without forcing the worker into multiple screens?
It utilizes a seamless translation matrix on the back end.
Okay, how does that work?
The WMS allows the worker to scan the lot barcode for the consumed wire, and then it immediately prompts for the serial stands for the finished harnesses on the same continuous screen.
Oh, so they don't even have to click away.
Exactly. Asynchronously, the software handles the consumption lines associating the lot and the output lines generating the serials, and then it posts them synchronously to the Business Central item ledger as a unified assembly order.
That's incredible. The worker never sees the database gymnastics at all. They just keep scanning and building.
It maintains the physical momentum.
Which brings us to the final phase, right? The finish line. The product is built, the serial numbers are logged, the consumption is posted. Now, it needs to move.
It needs a label.
It needs a label. And the way standard procedures handle label printing is, quite frankly, a perfect encapsulation of everything we've been talking about today.
It usually defaults back to the centralized model, unfortunately.
Right. The worker finishes this incredibly streamlined on-device assembly process, and then standard procedure dictates they have to walk across the floor to a centralized network printer to grab the barcode label they need to stick on the box.
It turns an optimized assembly worker into an administrative runner.
Yes. It's like checking out at a grocery store, and the cashier tells you they need to run to the back manager's office to print your receipt.
That's a great way to put it. And the latency there isn't just annoying, it introduces the real risk of mislabeling.
Oh, totally.
If you print 10 labels at a centralized desk and walk them back to a staging area with 10 different pallets, the chance of slapping the wrong barcode on the wrong box skyrockets.
So the fix here is pushing the print job to the edge. The text outlines that Warehouse Insight integrates label printing directly into the device's assembly output step.
Right to the scanner.
But how is that technically bypassing the standard Business Central print queues? Because those are notoriously server-centric.
Well, it bypasses the centralized queue by utilizing direct API calls from the handheld itself.
Okay.
When the worker hits complete on the assembly output on their scanner, the WMS doesn't just send a generic print command to the ERP server and hope it routes correctly.
What does it do instead?
It generates the label data right there and pushes it directly to a local IP address, typically a mobile printer worn on the worker's belt or, a station printer sitting 2 feet away.
Wow. So it binds the hardware and the software at the exact point of need.
Yes. The label prints as an integrated immediate reaction to the output step.
So you complete the build, the label prints right next to your hand, you apply it, and you move to the next item. The loop is closed.
It's completely seamless.
Looking at the entire journey we just mapped out, from bypassing unnecessary picks to untying the timing of consumption to handling complex serial transitions and finally instant printing. The through line here is undeniable.
The through line is that the system is finally conforming to the worker.
Yes.
For years, warehouse operations have operated under the assumption that human labor is just the flexible shock absorber for software limitations.
The Band-Aid.
Right. If the software had a gap, you just made the human walk a little further, type a little more, or wait a little longer.
And the floor paid for it.
Exactly. The floor paid for it in time, accuracy, and physical fatigue. The capabilities detailed in this document represent a real structural shift.
A major one.
By processing these complex transactions directly at the point of activity, you aren't just speeding up day entry, you are fundamentally changing the cadence of the warehouse. You are allowing assembly work to actually flow.
It's really about stripping away the administrative burden from the physical laborer.
Mm-hmm.
So for you listening, if your operations team is currently acting as that shock absorber, if they're contorting their workflows to satisfy the rigid demands of your ERP, there is a tangible path forward.
There absolutely is.
The source material notes that you can explore the mechanics of this deeper by visiting WMS4Dynamics.com or, of course, by looping in your Business Central partner to map out how these specific WMS extensions could align with your floor's physical footprint.
You know, synthesizing all of these capabilities, it raises a really fascinating operational question for the future of logistics.
Oh, what's that?
We are looking at technology that systematically untethers the worker from the workstation. It handles complex ledger postings, mixed item relational tracking, and local hardware routing entirely from a mobile scanner.
Right, so the desk basically becomes obsolete.
That's the question. As these floor workers become completely self-sufficient and digitally empowered at the point of action, what is the ongoing justification for the traditional warehouse desk job?
Wow.
Are we rapidly approaching a threshold where the physical warehouse office, the place where people go to do the system work, entirely disappears, leaving behind a completely fluid, moving network of autonomous operators?
A completely untethered floor. No more walking away from the station to log the data. You stay in the zone, you execute the work, and the system seamlessly keeps up with you.
It's wild to think about.
We'll leave you with that vision of the future to consider. Thanks for exploring the architecture of the modern floor with us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.